Virginia MacDonald, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How's everything with you?
It's all right. We were just talking a little bit before we started rolling about the snowstorm. So you're already experiencing it. I guess the snow already started here too, but they're claiming that parts of Ohio, that's where I live, parts of Ohio will get up to 12 inches of snow.
Woo! Yeah.
Yeah, I got an interesting email actually, and you know, do you watch The Office?
I do. Yeah, I'm a big fan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. That's great. We have that in common. So, what is it? You remember the episode with what was a wolf, where you get a fax, a text message, a phone call, and all this stuff at the same time?
That's right. Yeah, Ryan's big idea.
Yeah, right. That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. That's what I got just a few minutes before we started rolling. Was my phone started going crazy in all the different ways that Ohio State, where I teach, all the different ways that they communicate, and
Right.
and gently request that you be logged in at all times.
Right.
You know. So anyhow, but it's interesting because I mean I can't remember a time when there was actually a cancellation. They actually canceled all in-person.
So that's crazy. I mean, y'all are doing in-person classes right now, like on the regular.
Right. So the way this is working is we're on a hybrid. We're doing like a hybrid thing.
Right.
And so the hybrid thing is we're rehearsing, and actually my big band rehearsal was supposed to be tomorrow, but that just got canceled. But we rehearse, but we have like 10 feet between everybody,
Right,
and everybody's
right.
wearing the mask and all of that. And when the students come into the classroom, my graduate assistant checks to make sure that they have followed the university's rules. So there's an app, and the app basically asks you some questions.
Okay.
You know, it says, you know, what's your temperature? Have you been in touch with somebody that has this? You know, and all of this kind of stuff.
Okay. So it's
then,
like some high tech shit. That's cool.
Yeah, right. So then, you know, okay, I got my green check mark, you know, like that. So we do that. The other thing that we do is lessons are in person.
Okay, that makes sense.
But professors that don't feel comfortable with that, and or students can request to do them remotely.
Cool.
For the first couple weeks of the semester, we were totally virtual, and then so it's a lot of experimenting.
Yeah.
Because obviously
for sure.
nobody knows. Nobody could have planned for this.
Yeah.
And we're all hoping that it will end tomorrow. But
yeah, we'll see about that. I mean, it's you guys are lucky in a sense that you're able to do that right now. I mean, I think I'm trying to think now. We've been I was going to say lockdown since December, but we've also been in like some form of lockdown since the beginning of all of this. So since last February, I think I've played 2 gigs maybe in person. So, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point, but yeah. It's a struggle. It's a struggle right now, for sure.
Yeah, well, so you know, the United States with the 2-party system and everything.
Yeah.
And so we have some states that are blue states and some states that are red states.
Oh yeah.
and the Ohio is a red state. And you know, maybe there's some negatives associated with that. Maybe there's some positives associated with it. One thing that is that's been positive. Say my dad lives in Michigan, which
Okay.
is a blue state,
Right.
and they were locked down like crazy. They only recently opened gyms back up,
Right.
but the state I'm in, the day after Memorial Day, the gyms have been continuously open.
Right. Okay. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so I guess it depends on how you look at it. I mean, gyms haven't been a significant source of any sort of breakout or outbreak,
Right.
rather.
Right.
So, but yeah.
No, I feel you.
what it's worth.
I think it's definitely, you're right in that it's all experimentation right now. I mean, it's interesting because I think like right now here we're under a liberal government, and in a sense it's funny because I think our government has been quite conservative in the steps that we've taken so far. You know what I'm saying? Like the case numbers here are nothing compared to the States right now, but it's like we're all sitting here in our apartments or whatever, like not doing anything for the past year. So it is what it is. You know what I mean? It's like, I think there's definitely a trade-off there. And just trying to stay positive is like the best thing that at least I can do right now. Everything being said and done.
So you're in Toronto.
That's right.
Yeah. And okay, so I was on Facebook.
Okay.
Now, this is not the usual way that I like to discover folks. But in a pandemic,
Right.
seems like this is maybe a primary way.
Right. Absolutely.
And so I discovered you on Facebook, and I think you posted something in Jam of the Week or something.
Okay.
And and I think it was what was it? It was Donna Lee or something.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. Cool.
And my immediate thought about your playing. I mean, you're a great player.
Thank you.
But my immediate thought was there are a lot of clarinetists that have a lot of facility on the instrument, but there are not a lot of clarinetists that have a lot of facility that also have the stylistic, the nuance, obviously you've been soaking in it for a long time. There's not that many of those, and so I think that makes you very different from the pretty typical clarinet player.
Oh, thank you.
And nuance and stylistic stuff I'm talking about. Obviously,
Sure.
I'm talking about the jazz, the jazz nuance and stuff. Can you talk a little bit about maybe your upbringing and music in your life, the stuff that was going on around your house, and maybe early teachers and influences?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think I definitely had maybe a little bit of an atypical, well, not in this community, but for most people, upbringing, in that my dad is a saxophonist. So my mom is also a visual artist. So I grew up in like a very artistic household. And so for those of you who might know my dad's name's MacDonald, anyone watching who knows him or doesn't know him, he was practicing from the age of, the time I was born to now, several hours a day. So I was kind of enveloped in that from a really, really early age. And so with that, I think I'm very blessed, and I was very lucky in that there's certain things that were able to just kind of seep into me like through osmosis. So, I was listening to both my dad play all the time, but also recordings, so like jazz records, and then I was also going out to hear him at clubs. So I don't want to say part of the scene, but I was there kind of experiencing these things, and I was very lucky that way. And so I started going to a community music program here in Toronto when I was about 4 or 5 years old. So I started there. That was kind of like my
Thank you so much for watching my video so far. If you'd like to support, there are several ways to do so below. Also, likes are free. Please comment, share, and subscribe. Now back to the video.
That was kind of like my introduction to playing music, and I started my journey on clarinet when I was about 6 or 7 years old. And so I actually started playing clarinet. My dad gave me the option. He had all of these instruments set up, and you know, it was kind of like, okay, look around, see what you like, see if there's anything here that interests you. I think there was a saxophone, there was a flute, and clarinet, which he doubled on. And so the way that I like to think of it, maybe this isn't right, but you know, this is how I like to conceptualize it. I was like, hell no, I'm not playing the same instrument as this guy. I'm gonna do my own thing. And so I was kind of just in the moment gravitating towards clarinet. When I was young, I liked the way that it looked, and you know, throughout my teenage years, I just ended up sticking with it, and you know, taking lessons, and that just became the instrument that eventually I did. It was a conscious choice. I chose to express my artistic voice on. So that was kind of my start on the instrument. So again, I was exposed at a very young age to this specific instrument, but I was also exposed not really to clarinet players. Like I listened to everyone that I needed to, I think at least. But I think because the saxophone has such a heavy presence in my life, I was really drawn to that sound. And so subconsciously, I was trying to bring out a lot of the elements that I heard other saxophonists using or utilizing in their playing to the clarinet. And I think that was kind of a big part of, subconsciously at the time, and now maybe even more consciously now, how I found my voice. And that's not to say that I didn't do my fair share of listening to clarinetists and checking everyone out, like I said. But I think, again, when you're exposed to a certain sound from such a young age, you kind of tend to naturally gravitate towards that. And so, again, that was a big part in how I not only developed my sound, but also established vocabulary. And so I was looking to a lot of saxophonists for vocabulary, maybe a little bit more than clarinetists. And looking back on it now, I do think that that's a big part in how maybe I set myself apart a little bit from different clarinetists, you know?
So you play in you play with your dad. You play in a band with your dad. Yeah.
That's right.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's hard because people ask me to talk about it, and I'm like, you know, what do you say? It's like the most natural thing for me in the world, because I've been doing it since I was a kid. But yeah, like I said, I was really lucky in that was my first teacher as well, you know, and that kind of answers your last question. Sorry, I didn't get to that, but he was, you know, one of the main influences on me, but also my first real teacher. So, you know, as a kid, we would play duets, sometimes with him on saxophone, sometimes with him on piano. And so for me, like, that was such a big part in learning tunes. Like, he really got me to dig in, first of all, to the Great American Songbook, but then also, of course, some of his favorite composers, and then playing his own music. And so that kind of developed. And, you know, like, of course, I wasn't really on the level when I was younger. You know, not that I think I'm the best now, but I think it took time for him to get to the point where it's like, all right, we can do something together professionally. And so I've been really lucky in the past couple of years to go on tour with him. So we've done some stuff in Europe. Last year, before this all started, we were in India, and that was a really wild experience. And then I think 3 years ago now, we did a recording with the great Harold Mayburn, and that was a real special experience for me, like very, very humbling. So, I mean, playing with him, like I said, it's hard because it just feels like drinking water or anything else. You know, it's been something that I've been doing for such a long period of time, but it's, you know, it's really special to me, yeah.
So something else that we have in common is our dads were our first teachers.
Okay. Cool.
So my dad was he's a great saxophone player. He was a great saxophone player. He doesn't play anymore.
Okay.
Sounded like Lou Donaldson.
Okay. Yeah, I can get down with that.
And I keep saying this, and I've even said this in a couple interviews. Something that I want to do for him that I haven't done it yet, and I keep saying I'm going to do it, is I've got a cassette recording of him playing. I think it's like on a blues or something.
Okay.
And I want to transcribe it and give it to him.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, but maybe make a video, like one of those videos where there's like the transcription is scrolling on the bottom or something.
Yeah.
You know, spend a lot of time, make a big deal about it, you know, and give it to him, you know.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I love that.
But, you know, I got 3 lessons a week. I started when I was 6. I started on saxophone.
Okay.
And I got 3 lessons a week and an attentive ear on my practicing.
Right.
At all times, right? So, hold up, you don't change keys yet. That wasn't right.
Yeah. I know.
You may recognize some of that, right?
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
You know, and as maybe at sometimes annoying that can sort of be, it's maybe the greatest advantage. You know, it's an unbelievable advantage. I mean, to start young and to have someone that's at that level, that's a teacher that you live with. That's an incredible advantage.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, you know, it's like, well, I don't want to say you kick yourself because I'm lucky in that I still do a lot of playing with my dad. You know what I mean? But it's funny, like looking back on it and kind of remembering the moments where it was like, okay, like please just leave the practice room, like let me do my thing. And I think, you know, there is some element of that. It's hard, especially when you're younger and like you said, you started at a really young age too. You know, when you're a kid, you're a teenager, it's like you don't want that. You want to do your own thing, at least to a certain extent. And now I just look back on it and I'm like, okay, there's a lot of wisdom that I think I've still been able to access now, but I should have done it at a younger age, and that was stupid of me. But I mean, that's also the path that we take, right? And that's part of the journey too, I think. But yeah.
You know, I get frequently asked questions. My students ask me questions, you know, about what was I practicing when I first started. And I have no idea. I was 6, right? And I decided to interview my dad on this program, actually.
Okay, cool.
And I asked him those questions. And he had a very specific, he was very specific about what he wanted me to practice. He had an approach that I think in some ways we would consider unorthodox.
Okay.
For instance, there's a lot of weight in academia and just in general amongst jazz musicians, a lot of weight on transcribing.
Right, absolutely.
Right? Lots of weight on transcribing. And I think to my dad, one thing that he saw that was a possible negative is that the tendency for players that don't fully assimilate and really study the transcription to learn what it can actually teach would unwittingly be using the transcription to diminish their own voice and to put something over top of their voice, something that they didn't necessarily understand fully. Right. And so so I didn't spend very much time transcribing. However, we spent a ton of time doing ear training. Lots of ear training. He's sitting at the piano. He's playing, okay, this is a B flat. Okay, what's this note? Okay,
Right.
this is an A flat. Okay, what's this note?
Right.
And I don't have perfect pitch, but because of all of the years of ear training, there's not much that I don't know what it is
Right.
upon hearing it, first. And the way it worked was that we spent all of this time developing the ear, and all of this time developing facility,
Right.
so that when it came time to start transcribing, I could both hear and play back. It didn't matter what it was that I was hearing.
Right. Absolutely.
And that's not usually the stuff that you transcribe, right? You try to transcribe stuff that is, obviously transcribing stuff to sort of perceive and learn how to develop an arc in a solo. Obviously, that's its own, there's a purpose there.
Right.
Transcribing, but usually transcribing is like, okay, that's really hip. I don't know what that is, and I want to be able to play that. Right? But of course, I tell my students to transcribe. I'm regularly assigning them transcriptions because I think it's a very good teacher. But I just try to make sure that as they're transcribing, they're really asking those questions about what's going on.
Right. Yeah.
You have some thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, like I said, I think that my path was a little bit unusual because I was playing an instrument in which, there was a definite lineage, but maybe not quite as long or prolific as the lineage of saxophone or trumpet or piano, or really any other kind of mainstream instrument in this music. So I think that really informed my perspective in an interesting way. So for me, it's funny that you bring up the word assimilation as well, and it just kind of reminds me of also, jazz education in general and what that means, and how we go about teaching or instilling these concepts within like a university or whatever post-secondary music program. And there's a lot of focus on you need to do this, or you should be doing this, or these are the steps you need to take, and not a lot of explanation or reason, or maybe deeper looking into that. So I definitely feel like there is a lot of blind, like, okay, I'm gonna transcribe this train solo, or I'm gonna transcribe 20 train solos, and that will make me a better musician, right? And I think that, it's okay on a base level, to go into those things. Like, obviously,
it will definitely make you better.
Of course.
That's true.
Exactly. And well, that's the thing. It's like you can't go too wrong, but I think that sometimes maybe people don't really think about the deeper meaning, or why they are doing these things. Is it because someone is telling you to do them? Are you doing it for yourself? What are you hoping to develop? What are you hoping to bring into your playing, your music, your artistry? You know what I'm saying? And it doesn't always have to be that way, though. Like, sometimes I just sit down and I listen to a solo and I'm like, yeah, that's killing. I just want to learn that. Like, that's
Right.
really fucking cool. But I don't think that it necessarily should always be that. You know what I mean? And so again, back to my experience on the instrument. A lot of the time that I've spent transcribing was not necessarily always to integrate vocabulary or specific vocabulary into my playing, but more to get almost the vibe of other musicians into what I was doing.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's something that I felt like again, I want to be careful about what I say because, I do love so many clarinetists, and I've been influenced by so many amazing clarinetists within the lineage. But at the same time, there was a certain vibe that I felt maybe wasn't there in what I was hearing, in like what Train or what Bird was doing, and that I really, really wanted to try to bring into my playing. And so I think that has to do with vocabulary, but it's not just vocabulary, it's something else that you're trying to pin down, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Two clarinet players that my favorite clarinet player is Eddie Daniels.
Okay. Yeah, he's a master.
Yeah. That's my favorite clarinet player, and all of the projects that he's on, and all of it. I mean, he's quite a terrific player, playing both sides of the instrument the way that he does. Very few that could do that. I like Ken Poplawski.
Oh yeah, Ken's great. Ken is amazing, another master. And I actually took a lesson with him in high school, and that was a big influence on me for sure. Just in terms of seeing the possibilities of the instrument, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, I played with Ken on. I played with the Columbus Jazz Orchestra. And,
okay, cool.
And he came in. He was our guest artist, and I played with him then. Really good dude. Great player.
Yeah.
He has that thing that you have. Lots of facility, but all of that stylistic nuance. I mean, there are a lot of really great technical players these days.
Oh, yeah.
I think the pedagogy, the development of pedagogy, and then YouTube and all of these streaming services, all this way to get access to all music and recorded history and all like this, like anybody can just get it.
Right.
I think that creates musicians that have more technical facility at an earlier age. But that's not necessarily a replacement for experience, having lived, having, had your heart broken, or, just going through regular life stuff and what that kind of does to your music necessarily. Speaking of another great clarinetist, he's also a great saxophonist, is Paquito de Rivera.
Oh, yes.
Interviewing him there.
Oh,
that was like a dream come true, interviewing him. My three biggest influences. My three biggest influences, Sonny Stitt, John Coltrane, and Paquito de Rivera.
Okay, yeah. Paquito's killing. I love his playing and music.
On his alto, the stratospheric altissimo and range and control that he has. What's the name of that? I think I played part of it on that episode. Song for My Son.
Okay.
What is it? It's from the record Explosion.
Okay.
You listen to, that whole recording is great, but if you listen to his solo on that, the range that he has, and when you think he's probably topped the highest note, because everything is so clean and clear, and it's just like ridiculous, right? Then he plays higher, and
right.
It's perfectly in tune and blah blah blah, and all of that.
Yeah. See, that's something that I could never get together, or maybe I've chosen not to on the clarinet. Although I don't know. I mean, I have my own opinions on like who wants to hear that as well on that specific instrument. So I don't know. That's a personal choice.
Right.
Yeah. Not that I'm saying that about Paquito. I mean, hey, he has. I agree with you. Beautiful altissimo on both clarinet and saxophone. So yeah.
Yeah, I can play up to on clarinet. I can play up to C. C above. What is that?
Like high C, like altissimo C.
Yeah, I can play up to that note, but that's.
But why?
I have one note.
Why?
But I have one note up there, and I don't really remember the fingerings until I get down to A. So I almost never play higher than G.
Listen, like I don't play higher than like an F sharp. Like I'll be real with you. I think I could think of maybe I could count on one hand the amount of times, solo or performance recording, whatever, that I've gone higher than that. Like for me, it's just, and it's interesting going back to what you were talking about, like regarding transcribing, right? Like I transcribe a lot of trumpet players, trumpet solos, and so that's nice because the trumpet range is really, really close to where the clarinet is, and so it's like, well, yeah, I mean, you have people who are like out there blasting, like high G's or whatever, but for the most part, the trumpet kind of remains in the staff and a little bit above when you're thinking about constructing a line or a solo, and so I think that was a big part of, also maybe the reason why I don't go too high into the stratosphere myself, but again, the personal thing.
Yeah, when I was younger, quite a bit younger, maybe. Oh, I guess I would have been in my 20s. Soprano saxophone. I could play up to D.
Okay.
And really no one wants to hear that. No one wants to hear regular palm D on soprano. And I just got to the point where I don't know what the point of that is.
Right.
It doesn't make a lot of sense to play that high, and it's just kind of grating. So I just and then my setups have changed dramatically, and so I can't play. I mean, I can barely play an F sharp on my current setup.
Right.
But my setup now on soprano it's designed to to reduce wear and tear on the chops. And so then I don't have the same sort of tip strength on reeds to push against.
Right, yeah, which you need sometimes, for sure. But yeah, I mean, that's interesting to me too. I mean, I think about that a lot. And listen, I'm not going to say too much on the topic. I'm not a saxophone player. But again, it kind of strikes me as one of those things. Like, it's like, why are you doing this exactly? Do you need to do this for a technical reason? Is this bringing something in your artistry, like to, get to that point in terms of range?
No, it's all about
You know
house.
what I'm saying? Yeah.
No, it's all about house.
Okay.
Trying to get the most house. You understand what I mean?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Should
House is applause, reaction from the audience.
Okay. I've never heard that before.
It's like that, squealing a note and playing it for a long time and, waiting for, the audience to start reacting.
Right.
And all of that. Those were never the players that I liked, though. That would use sort of gimmicks and tricks to elicit some kind of response from the audience. I always appreciated cats. If you're going to play up in that range, then I want to hear control, facility. I want to hear it as worked out as anywhere else.
Right.
And I was telling you I can play C on clarinet. I had to learn how to play C on clarinet because I played in a musical.
Okay.
In the musical, there was an isolated C. I don't know why. It was totally ridiculous. But there was an isolated C, so she had to learn that note. But like I said, I couldn't tell you how to finger B or B flat. I can finger A, but that's it.
Yeah, that's probably for the best for everyone. I mean, it's like I said, I'm not playing up there. I just personally, I don't know. It's also like, I mean, man, when you think about the clarinet, there's so many registers that I think are maybe a little bit easier on the ear sometimes that get neglected, and that's really unfortunate to me. You know what I'm saying? Like I know obviously you play some clarinet, like the throat register right below the break. I mean, that's where I love to sit, and it's so beautiful and it's so underutilized, you know, and that's unfortunate to me. But then again, I think that has a lot to do with the acoustic bands, especially in the jazz realm, that clarinet ends up being part of, right? It's almost like sometimes you need to get up to that point, register-wise, so that you're heard.
Right.
And that's unfortunate too. I mean, I have a lot to say about that, but yeah.
Part of it too is that that area around the break, it exposes a lot of deficiency in most clarinet players, because the consistency of sound dramatically changes for a lot of players when they go over the break. And when they go back down through the break, and then it also sometimes creates a lot of squawking and all kinds of issues. Let alone the sort of issue that many, I don't like this term, but we're stuck with it. A lot of doublers have, where if you played saxophone first, the tendency to try to use the pinkies to slide the pinkies, right? Rather than to use to alternate pinkies.
Yeah, which I do sometimes. I'm not against it.
Well, I mean, there are situations where you have to do it.
Yeah.
Because, for instance, the E flat key doesn't exist on both sides on most clarinets, and it is on my bass clarinet. It's on both sides of the bass clarinet.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, God knows why that mechanism doesn't exist on a B flat clarinet. I don't know, but yeah.
It would fix a lot of issues.
Oh yeah. No, I mean for sure though. That's the thing, but it's unfortunate. I think in a lot of ways it's a bit of a misunderstood instrument for sure. But there's a lot of great people who are trying to do something with it. I do see, maybe like a rising prevalence again, and there being quite a few clarinetists out on the scene, kind of doing their thing. And so I'd like to see that. You know what I mean? I'd love to see more of that, and kind of change the way that people view the instrument as more of like a, old in the past thing, or a more traditional instrument. I think that it definitely has more to offer for sure.
So how much classical playing, how much classical rep have you, has that been a part of your development?
No, not really. I mean, listen, I was pretty much, I don't want to say self-taught, but I didn't have like a clarinet teacher, like a legitimate clarinet teacher, until I was about 15 or 16. So at that point I had been playing the instrument for about 10 years. And so I studied with my dad in terms of just getting things down musically. And I studied with, I know you hate this word, but I studied with a doubler here in Toronto, who her main instrument was saxophone, but she played some clarinet as well. So by the time I started taking lessons with a legit, again, I don't like that word, a legit teacher, I had apparently developed all of the wrong habits. So my embouchure was fucked up, my hand positioning was wrong, apparently. And so there were all of these things that all of a sudden I was alerted to that in my mind hadn't really been causing any issues. But to this teacher, it was like incomprehensible how I could even be playing. And so, that was, it was interesting to me, because I think in a lot of ways it opened my eyes to, okay, maybe I do need to take this instrument, or how I come about or go about playing it a little bit more seriously. But it was also quite discouraging in a sense. And it's funny, I was just talking to someone else about this the other day. Up until a couple of years ago, I I don't want to use the word scared, but almost hesitant about revisiting or playing any classical music, because this teacher drilled into me so many times that you don't have the right technique for it. You know, you don't have the right sound, you don't have the right embouchure, you don't have the right hand positioning. And it's just really unfortunate, you know what I mean? And I do a lot of my own teaching, and it's something that I've always tried to avoid after my own experiences, because you don't know how much what you say to someone, especially at a young, impressionable age, can kind of stick with them, and how much it can dissuade them from actually trying new things. So, unfortunately, no, classical music was not really a big part of my development whatsoever. Yeah.
Is that something that you maybe an untapped thing that you see maybe visiting at some point?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't have an aversion to it now. I love classical clarinet. I'm not very good at it. Like, that's the thing. I do think that there's a very specific sound that kind of goes with that style. But
to my ear, there is your sound would be quite compatible.
Oh, thank you.
You have a terrific, very even sound over the
Thank
full
you.
range.
Thank you.
I was watching your. I was watching something on Instagram,
Okay.
and you played through. Basically, you worked through a cycle on a particular pattern.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, and it was like, you know, you swipe to the right and played it with a different transposition, swipe it like this. Okay, now you're playing it, you know, descending or something.
Right.
And the thing I was most impressed by that was, didn't matter what the range was that you were on the instrument, or if you were going through the break or not, but everything sounded like exactly the same. It was very even and controlled, and that's yeah, that was quite impressive. So I think that's hogwash. Whoever was telling you that you know, they're definitely wrong.
Thank you. Thanks. No, I appreciate that. But, you know, it's funny, like, that's what I'm saying, right? These things definitely stick with you, even if not maybe at a conscious level. They're there somewhere kind of in the back of your brain, you know, like an echo. And again, it's not something, I'm at peace with it, you know, like I said at the beginning, this is all part of a journey to me. And I truly believe that, you know what I'm saying? So it is what it is. I have no regrets as to my musical upbringing, because it led me to the place that I'm at now. So yeah, I have no qualms about that. I mean, like I said, I love listening to classical music. I mean, whatever that means is such a wide, you know, encompassing amounts of different, in my mind, genres almost. But, you know, yeah.
It's about as diverse as the term jazz, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I interviewed Nicholas Payton.
Okay. Yeah.
And we talked quite a bit about, you know, BAM, and you know, the so-called J word, and his refusal to, you know, use the word and all that. It's interesting. There's a long history of the use of the word that was not used in a positive connotation. I mean, even if you look at the etymology of the word, it's pretty sordid.
Absolutely.
And it's not particularly explanatory.
No.
Like, if I say, hey, I want to listen to some jazz, I mean, I don't know, what do you mean? Like, you know, there's like you know, you're talking about hard bop, you're talking about fusion, are you talking about bebop, you're talking about New Orleans traditional, you're talking about, but what are we talking about here?
Yeah,
you know, because it's all so different. You're talking about big band, you're talking about instrumental, you're talking about, you know, if we're talking about vocal jazz, you're talking about, I mean, smooth jazz. You know, what are you talking about?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I was.
Go
yeah,
on.
go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No. Please finish what you were saying.
Yeah, I was in the car driving to Nashville for a summer session of the NAMM show. This is years and years ago. It was actually a trip that I took down there. I recorded a couple projects. A couple tracks I recorded with Victor Wooten in Nashville, and then I went to the NAMM show, and he connected me with some manufacturers and stuff. He's a great dude. And when I was driving down, I just remember, I turned to a station. You're stuck with whatever. It was terrestrial radio. It's a long time ago. And I was like, okay, well, let's see what's on the radio. And so there was a smooth jazz station.
Okay.
And they were playing Anita Baker.
Oh, okay. That's
so. Now I love Anita Baker.
Yeah.
But I think after Anita Baker, they played Toni Braxton. Now,
okay.
I was thinking to myself, so pretty much if you use the jazz term, you can play anything. The term doesn't really mean anything. It's just, it's a very wide term. And I think the general public, people that haven't studied the music, they're even more confused by it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Big time.
Like somebody tells you, hey, can you jazz it up?
Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
Well, yeah, I think that it's so true, and it's unfortunate, right? Like the word itself is almost synonymous with like a joke. You know what I'm saying? In a lot of circles, and to the general public. And so, I mean, that says a lot to me. In terms of Nick Payton, I mean, that's like one of my heroes. I grew up listening to his music. And, like I'm with him in terms of the fact that it is Black American music, right? Like there's no doubt in my mind of that. And, I won't say too much on it because I don't know if it's really my place to dictate what that is or what that means. But I think that the point that he makes that really resonates with me is why are people so scared to call it what it is, at least in my mind. You know what I mean? People have no problem referring to Indian classical music as just that, or Cuban music, or Latin music. You know what I'm saying? And so that's something that I think is really important to think about. What is the fear of calling something what it is, Yeah, that's kind of how I feel.
In that interview, he went on to say that he does not see what it is that he does as different from what Prince does.
Okay.
And he doesn't want it to be thought of as different from that. We talked a little bit about genres, and genres are sort of, it's a record company's way to sort of create an efficiency model with their marketing.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, well, these folks like this, they tend to like music that's like this. We'll call that this. And of course, early in popular music history, you have this sort of transition between R&B and rock and roll, right? Where rock and roll basically was R&B and whiteface. Right? It's the same stuff. And all of the music is it's all the same stuff, and it all comes from the same place. And in one sense, maybe we don't really need the labels, and we can just do the kind of music that we want to do, and go from there. Now, possibly there is some reason for having certain names or certain traditions, because if I need a bass player, the bass player would need to have a certain skill set to be able to play in my band. And so, yeah, so it's kind of a complicated sort of topic.
It is, absolutely. I mean, it's funny, like, I think on the other side too, it's, like the people who get lumped into the jazz category, whatever that may mean. Like I've talked to people on the other side of the spectrum who don't even think that is what they're doing with their music, but because it might be instrumental and there might be improvisation involved within whatever they're doing, then they get thrown into that category. And it's funny, like it's like you don't necessarily even conceptualize yourself as a certain type of artist, or you don't feel as though you're making a certain type of music, yet you are told that is what you are doing. And so I find that kind of interesting and strange, the disconnect that can be there. And I think you're right in that the style of music that has all kind of been lumped together, there's so many different things that are going on. You know what I'm saying? There's very cerebral things happening, which is cool. Like, I'm cool with it all. Like I'm pretty open-minded about what I listen to. But it's very cerebral, kind of more avant-garde things that are happening. And then, there's kind of like a middle ground to that. And then there's things that are more traditional. And I don't know. I think that there's definitely an element of an identity crisis in there, for sure. You know what I mean? So I don't know. How I feel, I'm probably with Nicholas Payton, at least in terms of recognizing what this music is. And that's kind of how I feel. That's my view on it. Yeah.
Okay, so as sort of possessed by music as you seem to be, I'm the same way. I don't remember choosing music.
Okay. Yeah.
I think it's like one of these things where one day I woke up and I was out in the middle of the lake, maybe closer to the other side, and then I was like, wait a minute, why am I out here? And, well, I guess I could keep swimming, or I could try to double back, and doubling back didn't make any sense because it was further to go backwards, but I don't remember choosing it.
Right.
But one thing in my life that I've not been particularly good at, I think my later decisions were better than my earlier decisions. It's with relationships.
Okay. Okay.
So, a challenge for someone that is so singularly focused on music, and you have to be if you're going to be any good, is that it really takes a special kind of person to understand that, to not try to compete with that.
That's right.
To not be, not to feel insecure, or based on the kind of attention that thing, or because of certain interactions that you're going to have probably with other musicians at a certain level. It's a tough thing, and the whole sort of time robbery of sort of toxic people.
Yeah.
And how that sort of can rob from your sort of your energy that you should be using to continue to dig deeper into the tradition, or into playing your instrument better, or into your into your composing, or into your developing a stronger pedagogy on a particular topic.
Right.
Do you have some thoughts about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm very lucky in that I think I found my person, and I'm very lucky to be partnered with a musician. And so in that sense, I feel like I'm with someone who really gets it. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know if you're familiar with my partner. I gotta give him a shout out, but he's an amazing guitar player. His name's Lucian Gray, and I love him dearly. But finding that person, I think you hit the nail on the head when you're an artist. I think that's what ends up happening a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like people kind of gravitate, and not just in artist relationships. I think people do tend to gravitate towards a lot of the time people who are kind of like them in a sense, or on a similar life journey, whatever that may mean to you. But yeah, I mean, in terms of toxic energy, I mean, that's hard. I think that maybe sometimes, I don't want to say I'm lucky, but I feel like I'm compatible with what I do in that I'm a very introverted person. I like spending time alone, not to the point where I'm a loner, but I need time to recharge and be with my own thoughts. That's just the type of person I am, I've realized. You know what I mean? And I can be very social in the right situation, and I like it. I love seeing my friends, but for me, I need that time to just sit and be and do whatever my thing is. It might be playing music one day, but it might just be reading or doing something else another day. And so in that sense, I feel good because I don't feel guilty anymore about sitting in the practice room for 4 or 5 hours, because I've also tried to surround myself with people who understand that I need to do that, and that is what my life is, and that is who I am as a person. And it's hard. I think I don't want to say I've lost friendships, but of course not everyone gets that, because it can be fucking weird to the average person. They don't understand what that is, and I have to try to remind myself, I think, that it's a blessing. Not everyone finds their passion in life. Not everyone has a passion, and that's okay too. But because I have this thing that works for me, I have to work for it, to happen. And so again, that's part of the journey, and just the wider journey to being a better musician, is trying to nurture that passion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
So I knew you were an introvert.
Oh, you did?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And I am too. Mm-hmm. Disproportionately, artists of a certain level are introverted.
Right.
And it's something that is an advantage. It's a superpower. Mm-hmm. Okay. If you consider it that. Folks that are not introverted require more interaction with other people.
Yes, that's right.
And so necessarily aren't going to be able to spend as much time in the practice room. Mm-hmm. And because, and maybe some people that are watching this now will be like, man, she seems like she's pretty extroverted the way she's talking right now. Well, that's what people think about me too. I know folks that I work with, or I went to church with for years, and I don't say anything because we're not talking. Mm-hmm. I you know what I'm saying? I don't. Of course. And when you see me walking, it's not because I am admiring nature. It's because I have somewhere to go. And if you wave at me and I don't see you, I'm not trying to snub you. It's just I'm going somewhere. I just have something to do, right? And so often is the case that introverts can be sort of misunderstood. I enjoy interacting with people. Part of the reason I started this podcast was to interact with people. But I don't like competing for people's attention.
No, I feel you. That makes sense. Yeah.
Because that's what actually saps my energy. So,
yeah, that's right.
So standing in front of a class, teaching, or standing in front of an auditorium, performing for thousands of people, that's fine. I don't feel sapped by that. But if I had to go to I don't know, some sort of mixer where I don't know anybody,
Right.
and I'm supposed to do some sort of small talking.
Right.
Small talking is the killer of my soul.
Yeah, I understand. I feel you. I get it. I mean, for me, well, I'm going to disagree with you on one thing. I love nature. I love being outside. And I think that
No.
Yeah.
I love nature too. That's not what I said. I love nature also. And I grew up in the country, and I used to practice outside. So, I mean, I love nature, but my point was, I'm not walking around hoping that I bump into random people that I don't know. That's not why I go. I'm walking because I have an agenda. Maybe the agenda is to admire nature.
Right.
But yeah, that's why I said that.
Yeah, I mean, what can I say about this? I mean, it's interesting, right? Like it's a fine line I think you have to walk too. I mean, the other thought that I had as well is so much of where my music comes from, and I think a lot of others' music comes from, and where our artistry comes from is, fostering and having deep relationships with other people, and then also the world around you at large. But yeah, no, for sure. I think that I like observing, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? And I'm cool with that. Like I'm comfortable being kind of inwards, and that's just how I am. And again, I feel very lucky in that I think I have an amazing group of friends who understands that, and that's so important, being comfortable in being that person, for sure. You know what I mean? Like it's okay to be inwards and to kind of go inside sometimes, and I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with that, for sure. And it's something that I think can be said about that. There's a benefit to being able to look inside. Not too
like
much,
I said,
but yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's a superpower. It's a superpower to be able to spend hours and hours and hours and hours by yourself working on a very specific thing.
Right.
Not everybody can do that. If you're not an introvert, it's likely that you're going to really struggle doing that with any kind of regularity. It would be just as energy depleting for an extrovert to spend that kind of lots of hours just doing this.
Right, of course.
Extroverts require, connection with other folks, even people that they don't know, they require that in order to sort of rejuvenate. And then that sort of gives them the energy that they need to go and spend some time by themselves and work on something.
Yeah, for sure.
Whereas we're exactly the opposite.
That's
if
right,
I've spent enough time by myself, then I can muster up I could muster up the energy to go somewhere with a bunch of people that I don't know.
For sure.
much.
No, I feel you. I'm on the same page, definitely. At least some of the time, but that's the thing too. Like humans are so fluid. I don't always feel like that person. You know what I mean? Like we could be so many people in one. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not always the persona.
But here's the question. But this is the question. This is the question though. And because I have encountered some people that weren't sure if they were an introvert or an extrovert, because sometimes they're good with being around people, and sometimes they want to have some alone time.
Right.
And probably every kind of person is that way.
Yeah,
right?
I think so. Yeah.
But what tells you is, if you had to interact with a bunch of strangers and had to small talk, say 2 hours straight of small talking, you're not allowed to go deep. You can't.
Are you
have
asking
any
me?
of the stuff.
Yeah. Hell
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
But see, I
No,
mean,
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know. I have a hard time believing that anyone wants to do that. I mean, it's
No,
not fair.
people like doing that. Look, people
Yeah.
like doing that. Look,
I don't know.
My wife
Yeah.
is one of them.
Okay.
My wife is one of them. Okay.
Yeah.
So now let's look at how this maybe interacts with the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're sequestered right now, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So for someone like you, being sequestered, it's a drag. There's probably stuff that you'd like to be doing. But it would be significantly worse for someone that needs to go and see some, in small talk with some people that they don't know.
Yeah. No, for sure. For sure.
So do you think that you have been, have you been particularly productive during the pandemic as far as practicing or?
Yeah. Well, I mean, my answer might surprise you. And this is what I mean by I think we all have a duality, if you will, inside of us, right? Like, yes, I agree. That is the person who I identify with on most days. But at the same time, it's hard. I miss not only the musical but social aspect of playing with other human beings and being around and feeling that energy too, because there's something to be said about the energy that is there when you're not only with people but like in a club or wherever you're playing. And the other thing too is I am also the type of person who really benefits from a certain amount of pressure, if you will. So that's really been tough for me to cope with. Like not having any performances and just trying to like set my own schedule, that's not something that I've ever been good at. And so I've really struggled with that. And I think a lot of people have, but that's the thing, it changes week to week. Like some days I'm in there and I'm like, yeah, this is all good. I'm in the zone, things are happening. I'm writing music, I'm playing music. And then other days it's just not happening. And something that I've been trying to instill in myself over the past, I was gonna say months, but I guess it's been a year now, which is crazy. But anyway, something I've been trying to instill in myself is just a sense of inner kindness, being kind to yourself, and accepting that some days it's not going to happen. And that doesn't mean necessarily that you have failed to use your time or that, you're not working hard enough. Because again, it's just part of who you are, and who you are informs what you're doing. I don't like the idea of forcing anything too much. Discipline is another thing, but I don't want to force anything, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, a round hole for a round peg. A square hole for a square peg.
Right.
Not a round hole for a square peg.
Yes, hopefully not.
Right. So no, I get that, and the discipline thing that's an interesting sort of distinction making between forcing and what discipline is. So yeah. Okay. So the composing thing. Okay. Sure. So I'm a pretty. I like this thing that you said that you benefit from pressure, having a certain pressure, like deadlines.
Yes.
Like, okay, this chart has to be written by this time. Bang, there it is. Or I particularly like it when the more parameters that are spelled out, the easier it is for me to compose something.
Right.
The easier it is for me to arrange something. When they're like, it's got to be this, it's got to be 3 minutes, it's got to be 2 times through the A section and this.
Right.
When they do that, then it's like, oh yeah, that's what's happening. But if it's just, hey, I'm just going to write something, let me see, let's check the direction of the wind and see what's happening.
Right.
That's when it takes a lot longer for stuff to happen. And that's also the kind of writing that I really, really benefit from playing with other musicians and sort of, my composition is highly influenced by people that I play with. Because
cool.
I know, so this musician has a particular capability, and I want to showcase that in some kind of way. And so I'll hear a melody that tends to showcase that.
Right. Yeah.
Do you feel? I mean, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I resonate with some of what you're saying in terms of either setting parameters for yourself or having parameters set for you. And I think a lot of that manifests, or at least that feeling manifests when you have perfectionist or perfectionistic tendencies, right? When you have unlimited time and unlimited possibilities, you get what I like to call, I've been using this term a lot, you get option paralysis, right? Because you don't know which direction will be the best, or which direction, and it could be something as simple as one note or one chord, one passing chord. You don't know if that is the best choice to make, and that's something that I grapple with all the time. And I think there's something to be said about that for sure. I think a lot of people romanticize songwriting specifically in the sense that it has to be a manifestation of some idea that you have in your head. It has to come naturally, and I've actually found that just doesn't work for me. It doesn't happen, and it doesn't get done if I do things that way. So and that's kind of what I was saying before, right? In terms of having a deadline, in terms of having a little bit of pressure on me, things start to happen a little bit faster. So that's the way my brain works.
Let me see if I can remember this correctly, because I know you're The Office. You like The Office.
That's right. Yeah.
What did Michael Scott say? He says, what is it? What is it? Desperation leads to the quickest results, or something.
Okay.
I can't remember what the I can't remember the exact quote, but it was something like that.
Yeah, that sounds relatable. Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
I mean, we didn't say you'd like the results, but you're gonna get some results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes that's what it needs to be, though. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you need something, and I don't know. I mean, I think having something there is better than just nothing, or just sitting there waiting for something. Sometimes you just have to try to make it happen, whatever.
Yeah, I had when I was in I went to Western Michigan University, and during my undergrad, Kenny Warner came, and this was like right about when he released the book Effortless Mastery. And I just sort of aged myself. You could do some math and figure out.
Yeah, the multiplication table is going over here.
And he did a composition workshop with us, and he was using all kinds of different ways. I have a notebook, and I took a bunch of notes and stuff. Mm-hmm. He had all these different approaches to just getting something on the page.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it was like a random calculation, or, taking a word in developing a chart, a way to convert the letters in the word or the words in a sentence to notes.
Okay.
Or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then once you actually have something on the page, then you can use your musicianship
right
and what it does to you, and you start tweaking.
Right.
That whole I'm going to steal that term, option paralysis.
Option paralysis. Yeah, it's real.
Yeah.
It's real. And it's also real
it
watching
definitely
Netflix and trying to find something on TV.
It is real.
Yeah.
It is real. But once you have something down, then you can. It's much easier to sort of. At least for me, once I have something down, it's easier for me to do something. Staring at a blank page, that's a different issue,
Right.
because. So once you get something down on the page, you have less options, right? Because you actually have something on the page. If you have nothing on the page, you have unending possibilities and options.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is too. I mean, I feel like I think you talked about this a little bit near the beginning of our conversation, but just how daunting it can be when you have access to everything out there musically. You know what I'm saying? Like, it is so easy, more than ever, I think. I think that's something that could be agreed on universally, to seek out peers or mentors or whoever, listen, expose yourself to their music and playing, and that can be very scary, in a sense, for sure. It can be incredibly inspiring, and I think it can be very motivational rather, but it's also very frightening, I think, when you are acutely aware of how many amazing musicians are out there, and composers too, just in relation to what we're talking about. And so it's difficult too, because just on that note, I think that seeing everything on like a phone or computer right in front of you, just going down the row, so much of what you're seeing, first of all, is so saturated in terms of everything being there and just being presented with everything. But you end up seeing a lot of people doing the same thing. And I think it is because you, again, are so acutely aware of everything that is happening in front of you. And so that's hard as well, trying to get that out of your head. The idea that, you saw this video on Instagram or wherever you listened to this recording, and just trying to set your own path and do your own thing, not only as a composer, but just a musician in general,
Yeah. So I'm 46. And so I'm old enough to, so my first record came out when I was 14.
Wow.
And it was actually a record, right?
Cool.
It was an 89. And every project since then came out on CD, except for the latest one that I just released on SoundCloud and on YouTube. So during that time, and this was, of course, when I was coming up, this is, of course, before Napster and the whole streaming music thing.
Right.
First, it was being done illegally, then companies said, "Okay, this is the new model,"
Right.
and so record companies had more of a, they had basically total control of what music was going to, what it was going to sound like. Right. So, good, bad, or indifferent, it was, there was a certain, you knew it was going to fit in here. Right. So stuff that was down here or stuff that was up there, it wasn't going to exist. It was going to be right here. And that's positive in that you kind of knew what you were getting. It was negative in that not as many people necessarily had an opportunity, so there wasn't as much access.
Right.
So fast forward, everyone has access basically. And if you want to get something to where anybody in the world can get to it, you can bypass everything and just upload it to social media. Now, okay, so maybe you're not going to get paid for that, but if you want a bunch of people to see it, there it is.
Right.
Now, simultaneously, because when I was coming up, I had to actually buy records and buy CDs, and so when a new project would come out, I would purchase it. It was something physical, and maybe I call buddies of mine and say, hey, I just got, they just re-released this, Coltrane, whatever. Hey, let's go get some pizza and listen, right? So and everybody in the listening session sort of hears it differently, and so you're kind of talking about what you hear and you're getting that out of it. But because the record actually cost money and I didn't have unlimited money,
Right.
That record got played a lot more.
Yeah.
Over and over and over and over and over.
Right.
And over and over, right?
Right.
Okay, now again, fast forward that. Now we have access to all music in recorded history, basically. Basically, is on YouTube or Spotify or Apple, Music, whatever it is.
Right.
And rather than us sort of listening to the music programmatically as it was presented in a CD, we're sort of jumping around and, let me hear this song. Okay, and I'm going to hear this song from over here and this song from over there.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
And frequently I hear my students, I ask my students about, who they're into, who they listen to. Oh yeah, I love everything. I like this and I love that and like this. But all it takes is just to ask a couple deeper questions, and then you can see how shallow what it is that's being expressed.
Right.
And I see this as a real problem, because that obviously works against what our goal is to really, and that's, I started out by talking about you, and it's like you've been soaking in the music. There's nuance and there's all this stuff in your playing, but you can't get that if you haven't listened to this record 1,000 times.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's the thing too. I think maybe I'm a little bit older in that I still got to experience some of that. I mean, my my age was like LimeWire, so that was the thing, right? Like you could.
Right.
It was still. It was kind of almost like access to everything that you wanted. Like you would have to search a little bit harder, but it was there, right? I do think in a certain sense, though, if you love music, you will have those moments or those albums or releases, whatever, LPs at this point, a lot of the time, that you do listen to and you repeat over and over again. But I agree, yeah, I mean, it's very, what's the word, like bipolar now, you know what I'm saying? And I was talking to someone else about this recently. It's like, sometimes I have to stop myself. I mean, I'll be scrolling through Instagram and I see something killing and I'm like, oh yeah, cool. It's just like, you know what I mean? Because there's so much there in front of you. And it's like, it's just really hard, because is it the platform for concentrated listening? No. But at the same time, it's like, this is the reason that we are talking right now. So it's hard. There are genuine elements of human connection that these platforms present. But you're right in the sense that so much of it is so superficial. So it's really hard. I think it's about informing yourself as much as possible. You know what I'm saying? Like if okay, like I'm scrolling through Instagram, take all of this with a grain of salt. This isn't real life. Or if it is real life, it's just a microcosm of real life. You know what I mean? Because so many people get caught up in that, and I don't know. It is what it is, but I see a lot of that, and it's unhealthy, I think.
So with that in mind, what have you been listening to?
What have I been listening to lately? Okay, I bounce back and forth. I can name some like more currently active musicians that I've been listening to, like lately.
Yeah.
I've been really checking out a lot of Joel Ross. I'm a big fan of his. I really love his music. Also, Emmanuel Wilkins. I just heard something the other day of him with Jonathan Blake. And it's funny because I actually heard that on Instagram, but it was like a full video from a concert. And so I actually stopped and took the time to check that out. And I was like, yeah, like, man, that's killing. So I've been checking out those two a lot.
Yeah, Micah Thomas is from Columbus.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
He went to the camp that he went to Ohio State camp. Years ago when he was still in high school.
Right.
And he's been a pretty frequent featured artist with the Columbus Jazz Orchestra.
Okay, cool. Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing. I'm trying to think. Like I've been checking out. I try to be supportive, but also, just listen to some live music. I've been checking out some of these like Smalls and like Village Vanguard, I think, live streams. Who else have I been listening to? Big fan of Melissa Aldana. I really love her music. And then also always going backwards as well, and checking out some, not older, but stuff, music from the past. Always going back and listening to a lot of Joe Henderson. So I've been doing that recently. And I actually just discovered, this was kind of cool for me. I found this Sonny Rollins album that I first heard as like kind of like a bootleg on YouTube a couple of years ago, and I didn't realize at the time that it was an album, and it got deleted, and I was like, damn, that was really killing. And so I don't know if you're hip to this album, but it's Sonny Rollins, and it's like a compilation from a concert in Paris in 1965 and Copenhagen in 1968. And so if you're not hip to this, check it out. There's like a version of Three Little Words that is, no joke, 30 minutes long, a version of 4 that's like 50 minutes. And it's like, I'm a big Sonny Rollins fan. Like, he's just burning the whole way throughout. It's like you expect the energy to die down, but it actually just keeps going up and up until you're like an hour into one song. So that I've been listening to that a little bit over the past couple of days, and yeah, that's kind of what I've been listening to.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Rick Margitza, I interviewed him, and he shared with me some live Coltrane.
Cool.
Some like unreleased bootleg live Coltrane, and I haven't had a chance to listen to it. Sorry, Rick, haven't had a chance because I interviewed him a while ago. Right. I haven't had a chance to like really listen to it yet, but I'm looking forward to digging into that.
Yeah, is that accessible to the public? Or?
It is not.
Okay.
Like,
I might have to send him a DM.
It's like some secret sauce.
Okay. Cool.
I mean, I might could slide some. I might just slide it to you. So I'm sure you wouldn't mind.
Pretty sweet. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's been great talking to you.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you want to plug?
Having me.
Oh yeah. Is there anything you want to plug?
Oh man, this is where I have shortfalls. Yeah, I mean, to whoever's watching, you can check me out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, although I don't really use it, YouTube, and my handle is VIRGFM. And hopefully, we didn't really talk about this. Hopefully, I will be releasing my debut album at some point this year. So that's kind of something that I'm looking forward to. So yeah, y'all can stay tuned for that for sure.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that too. So
yeah, awesome. Yes. Thanks for having me.
All right, you got it.
Cool.
Well, God bless you.
All right. Have a nice day.